When you think of Saudi Arabia, what comes to mind? Probably two things, right? Oil and just immense wealth. But behind all that, there's a crazy paradox. This is a kingdom that's one of the richest on the planet, but at the same time, it's one of the poorest when it comes to water.
I mean, just picture it. We're talking about a country where 98% of the land is just sand, where rain is something you only hear about. It is, get this, the largest country in the entire world without a single permanent natural river.
And yet, right in the middle of this bone-dry desert, Saudi Arabia is building one of the most unbelievable engineering projects ever. It's an artificial river built completely underground, and it's so long, it's going to be twice the length of the Nile River. Yeah, the actual Nile. It just sounds completely impossible, doesn't it? A country with no water is building a massive river. So the big question is, how in the world are they pulling this off? Okay, so to really wrap your head around the solution, you first have to understand just how massive the problem is. Imagine a nation of over 35 million people with practically zero natural, renewable sources of fresh water. None. I think this quote just says it all, really. You can have all the money in the world, but you can't change geography. You can't just make it rain. And for decades, this has been the single biggest challenge for Saudi Arabia's survival. For a while, though, it seemed like they had a secret weapon, a hidden treasure buried deep, deep under the sand. It was a huge reserve of ancient water, and they started tapping into it to fuel their incredible growth. But there was a catch. This solution had a ticking clock. So we're not talking about your average well water here. This is fossil water. It's a one-time resource. It literally took millions of years for this water to collect in underground pockets, and once you pump it out, that's it. It's gone forever. It's not getting refilled by rain. And oh boy, did they use it. Back in the 70s, they had this really ambitious idea to become self-sufficient in food. So they decided to start growing wheat in the desert. It was a noble goal, but it was absolutely catastrophic for their water supply. By 2003, a mind-blowing 85% of their water was being used for agriculture. And then, in 2016, NASA satellites confirmed their worst fears. Those ancient water reserves were just disappearing. It was a critical error. They were burning through their only natural water savings account with no way to make a deposit. A massive crisis was on the horizon, and they needed a new plan, a radical one. And that, right there, is what led to this project. We're talking about an engineering marvel, a lifeline for the whole country, built from absolutely nothing. And they built it underground for a simple reason: to stop the precious water from just evaporating away under that intense desert sun. Let's just talk about the scale here for a second, because these numbers are just insane. The total length of this pipeline network is 12,000 kilometers. Let that sink in. That is more than double the length of the real Nile River. And what about capacity? Well, this whole system is designed to pump 9.4 million cubic meters of fresh water. We're talking 9.4 times billion liters every single day. It's a staggering amount of water, enough to keep cities running and even bring back agriculture. But of course, that brings us to the cost. Making a river flow where there isn't one, and in some cases, pushing all that water uphill to cities in the mountains, takes an incredible amount of power. In fact, just the pumping stations for this network use up 9% of the entire country's electricity. So you have to be asking, right? If the fossil water is gone and there are no rivers, where is all this water actually coming from? The answer is pretty simple. They're making it. They're taking water from the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf and turning it from salt water into fresh water through a process called desalination. So the country has built 28 of these massive desalination plants, and they mostly use two different technologies. The first one is called multi-stage distillation. You can basically think of it as a super high-tech way of boiling seawater over and over and collecting the steam, which is pure water. The second method, which is becoming more common, is reverse osmosis. Imagine a filter so fine that water molecules can get through, but the bigger salt molecules get stuck. Reverse osmosis uses insane amounts of pressure to force seawater through these membranes, leaving all the salt behind. But as you can probably guess, a technological miracle like this, well, it's not perfect. Creating something out of nothing, it turns out, has a pretty significant hidden cost. So let's just think about that for a second. If you're taking all the salt out of billions and billions of liters of seawater day after day, what do you have left over? Where does all that salt actually go? Well, you're left with this: 329,000 tons. Just for scale, a blue whale, the biggest mammal on the planet, weighs about 200 tons. So this is like the weight of more than 1,600 blue whales. And that's exactly what it is: a thick, super concentrated, toxic, salty sludge that they call brine. And they produce that staggering amount every single day. All that waste has to go somewhere, and right now, it's just getting pumped straight back into the ocean. And this is not harmless stuff. Pumping all of this hot, extremely salty brine back into the sea raises the temperature and the salt levels of the local water. This basically chokes the marine life, creating what are called dead zones, where nothing can survive. It absolutely devastates fragile ecosystems like coral reefs. Many experts consider it a huge and often overlooked environmental threat. So here's the twist. In solving one massive existential problem, a lack of water, they've accidentally created a brand new one, a massive pollution problem. And now they're turning that same incredible spirit of innovation towards solving this new crisis. And they're not just ignoring it, they're coming up with new strategies. One idea is to use these deep-sea diffusers that spread the brine out over a much wider area, which helps to dilute how harmful it is. But there's an even cooler idea called brine mining, where they treat the waste not as pollution, but as a resource. They can actually pull out valuable minerals like magnesium and potassium from the brine, potentially turning a huge problem into a whole new profitable industry. This whole story is just incredible, isn't it? The one country on Earth with no rivers, the same country that almost completely drained its ancient water supply, has now become such a leader in water technology that in 2027, it's actually going to host the World Water Forum. I mean, what a statement that is. And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. Saudi Arabia has used its incredible wealth and human ingenuity to solve what seemed like an unsolvable problem. But in doing so, they created a whole new environmental challenge. It really makes you wonder, can our technology ever truly conquer scarcity? Or does it just change the problem, kicking the can down the road for the next generation to solve?